What are you doing, Luke? Ugh.
Guess that man knows karate.
Did he?
Yeah.
I know what's karate. Hi everyone, it's Leanne here and welcome to Two Little Puzzle Pieces. So you're probably, if you've discovered this video, then you have discovered this channel, and this is a channel. I'm a mum of two children with autism and really just giving my advice as a mum on strategies and techniques that have worked for my two children with autism. So of course we have a cat behind me, but we'll get this rolling. So today's video is really just strategies and things that I put in place to help my autistic children transition to mainstream school comfortably, happily, and successfully. Because at the end of the day, you want a successful transition to school. You want your child to be comfortable, feel safe, supported, inclusive in that environment. So both my children are in mainstream schools successfully. My eldest is 8 years old with just level 2 high functioning autism. My youngest, who's just started kindergarten, who is 6, has just an autism spectrum diagnosis with suspected delays. He has been diagnosed with some speech impairments and some receptive and expressive delays. So he's a little very different sides of the spectrum, but still happy and healthy. So these are tips that I've done to help my child get to school. So we'll go backstory. We'll start with Michael, how Michael's experience with school. Michael being my eldest, I was very new to what school means and the reality of going to school is and the expectations around school. So of course I started him off at preschool because I wanted him to have the experience of going to school with kids he knows, as well as just getting an idea of a school environment and the routines and things that involve, and the stuff that I don't know that he might need to know to be successful at school. So Michael has very strong anxiety, his anxiety is on the highest that you can get on anxiety. So he used to struggle for drop-offs at preschool. Sometimes it would take me an hour just to get a successful drop-off happening with him where I could leave. And some days he would be kicking the gate as I'm leaving, screaming, starting to throw things out of the preschool gate and barricading the gate as well with anything he could find. He just had a very negative experience with drop-offs, and the preschool is very supportive on this, and we'll try and strategies and ways to make this transition better. It did get to a point that he did have a successful transition. He would just say goodbye to me and was happy, and it was successful. And we worked on that, took a year of building those strategies in place, and now it was also coming to the reality now of how can we make these strategies happen in a school environment. First thing was I was very naive, so I didn't realize how many appointments I should have had with the teacher, the principal. I should have pushed for more meetings, and I didn't. I just was so naive that I trusted that the school would have it, the preschool would have it too. I was really wrong. I should have been more involved in talking to the school and having those conversations with the school before he started. So of course that was a big wake-up call for me, that how naive that I think he could go to school just basically explaining yes he has autism and trusting that the educators would know what they're doing. So of course once we finally got to the school, it was very overwhelming experience for both me and Michael. he cried and screamed a lot of the first 3 weeks. It was 3 weeks of him just crying and screaming, and me leaving the school crying and crying because I just, I didn't realize how much this would happen to me in my life, what it was like to send a kid to school. And then also having Luke to think about when he was just getting diagnosed, and the reality of having 2 children with autism at the same time. So of course I ended up thinking of strategies to help Michael. So I empowered myself to help him because I knew that this wasn't working and it needed to change. And I had a teacher that was really old fashioned. So anytime I would try and suggest strategies or things to help make the transition better or make Michael's life better at school, she just wouldn't have a bar of it because she's very old fashioned. So I ended up having to get occupational therapists, hello cat, speech therapists into the school to sort of to do a review to see what was going on, try and get some strategies into place. So that worked a lot better. She kind of listened to the therapists because they're professionals, but of course not me. So we ended up with a strategy for Michael that I would come to the school. I would wait. We would wait at there was a near the office of our school. There was a teepee and a bench and a whale statue. So I put in place a strategy of why don't I wait with Michael there, and the teacher or the aide comes and collects him and takes him to class when it's a bit quieter and not so overwhelming for him with sounds and other kids running around. Because he was one of the kids, if you say hello to him, he would clench up, like, contort, like he couldn't stand. So that's where he struggled with school drop-offs too. He really struggled with there's kids running around everywhere and noise happening, and it's just was a lot happening at once for him. So we started off, that's the strategy I ended up putting in place for Michael to help him transition, and that was very successful. That one was working. Not every day he wanted to go, some days he didn't really go as happily as other days, and that's just a part of it. Every day is different, but we did that for most of the term for the beginning, and that worked wonderfully. And then Michael got to a point that he didn't want to do that anymore. So then we went, all right, we don't have to do this anymore. And it got to a stage that he would let me come and drop him off to class without all the meltdowns and being overwhelmed and the anxieties, because he finally felt comfortable and he knew the routine and knew the expectations of what was needed for him. And of course, we did have social stories in place. The teacher made one that sometimes when he was waiting, we would show him this social story to explain that this is what we're doing now, that he was going to say goodbye to mum and go. And that really helped. Also, what helped, another thing that really helped, was making this. The school made this one for me, and it's just an introduction card to explain to the other kids, and just to explain, sorry, my phone's going off, to explain who Michael is, that he has autism, and that it's overwhelming and scary to go to school. And I found that really was successful for Michael's experience, because the other kids got to know who he was and not sort of have the reaction of, oh, why is this kid screaming and not having such a good time. It's just more, they kind of knew what was going on. So I found that was really successful. Of course, you don't have to do this. This is not, if you don't feel comfortable letting families and kids know about your kids and their disability, then that's your choice. But this is the road I decided to go on for Michael, was an introduction card putting a strategy in place and putting my foot down with the school to do this strategy. And that helped. And then, of course, after that, the school finally brought in some visual aids in the classroom to help Michael's day and everything else. So I found that was how we got eventually a successful transition with Michael. And then I worked out very quickly, anything that you put in writing is more successful with a school than verbally telling the school or a teacher that this is the change you want to happen. Because I found every time I would say something or recommend something verbally, the school would just bar me on it. The moment I put it in writing and I signed it and dated it and kept a copy for myself, the school would actually listen to that. They sort of went, okay, we're doing this now, because it became a more legal document and a paper trail that they couldn't ignore. So that's my next step, because Michael was, because he wasn't cooperating, it did get to the point that the teachers and aides were not carrying him, but using more physical approaches to try and get Michael to go where they wanted him to go, and I wasn't feeling comfortable with that. So that's, again, I empowered myself to go, no, this is not okay. I do not like how this is happening. So I got it in writing, basically saying, and I Google searched as well. I went online, I researched how to make a document for school. So for him, I didn't want him being handled the way he was handling. So I Google searched a legal document. I called this document school strategies. So I put in place some strategies on what helps Michael, what helps him when he's in certain situations, as well as the clause saying that I do not want that force for my child, if you know what I mean. So that really helped me get past that barrier as well. But it took me a good year, 12 months of this, because I was so naive. Like I said, I was very naive, and I was just upset and overwhelmed at the time, and being new to it, I just didn't know what I was doing. So of course, that was a really hard experience for me and Michael. Now he's happy in school, and I'm a bit more empowered to help him. So now Luke has started school, and with Luke, I started off last year. The year before I started, we sent this to the school, this one, more for the teachers than anything. And then the start of this year, we made this one for Luke. And that goes a bit more into detail about him, because he has a little bit more needs than Michael, and a photo of him and Michael, because they are brothers now. So that's sort of what I made for Luke. I did have one of these for Michael as well, but the preschool made this one up, a social story. So I did have it for Michael, and photos of Luke at school. So, and I started showing Luke this one during the Christmas holiday break, sort of getting him used to the idea of his teachers and him at school and what it was. And one thing that my preschool did, which was really beneficial, they do school transitioning for the last term of the year. And what school transitioning is exactly what all these photos are about. The preschoolers actually get to go to the school every week for a couple hours a week to be with the kindergarten teacher and do school stuff at the school. So Michael did that one as well. That didn't really help Michael. So he did all that transition. That didn't help his mind understand what school was about. And we had the social stories that I would read to him, and it still didn't help him. Not until he actually got to that situation when this is what school and this is what they meant, that he he had to navigate it. Where Luke thrived on the transitioning, going to the school weekly at the end of last year and doing stuff at the school. He reveled in that. But I think it's also he reveled in that because his older brother was doing it. So for over 2 years, he'd been going to drop off his older brother at school, and his older brother would be coming home from school on and off the bus and other things. So Luke kind of was lucky in the sense that he kind of got an idea or understanding of what school was because Michael was going, and all that conversation around Michael's at school. Michael's at school, Michael's home on the bus, and explaining that all to Luke, that Michael is somewhere else and Michael's somewhere different. So I think Luke was very lucky in that sense that he kind of knew what school was without really being at school yet. So, and everyone loves Michael. Apparently his laugh is so infectious in the school that all the kids just love him. And he went from the most anxious kid to the loudest kid in the playground now, which I'm getting very successful results from Michael's experience at school. So now Luke's at school. We started off with a transition plan of half days. So he started off an hour for the first week of school. So I'd just go have a coffee across the road and then I would pick him up. And we did that for a week. And then 2 hours the next week, 3 hours. So we started off with half days. Michael also started off with half days, but he started off from 11:30 pickups for the first week, then 12:15. So Michael, and that's what I forgot to mention at the beginning with Michael. Michael also started with half days at school where I would pick him up and bring him home. And I think that confused him as well with because he likes routine, and he knows once he knows what he's doing each week, he's pretty comfortable doing that. Where the half days, Luke's kind of not reveling in the half days. He wants to be there full time, but we're doing this gradual half days at the moment, and it's more for the teachers to understand Luke better. That's why they're doing it. Also, they want to know what he likes, how he's changing routine, and we've also got the communication book. So I'm actually, depending on the teacher, a communication book can be really good or really frustrating thing. Like Michael's teacher was very vague in her communication book, and she was just writing things about what they did during the lessons, but none of the nitty gritty, saying Michael got overwhelmed by this today. Where I'm lucky Luke's teacher has reveled in this. He's reveled in the communication book, and he actually tells me stuff like, we tried to do this activity and Luke got overwhelmed and ran out of the classroom. And that has been amazing. That communication has been perfect because I've been taking those pages and giving them to my occupational therapist, my speech therapist, so they can actually get a better picture of how Luke is coping in his day-to-day in the classroom. So I found that the communication book can be fantastic if you've got a teacher that's willing to be open as well. And that's where your school experience can be make or break as well. If you've got a teacher that cares and wants to take the time in to be open with you, then you will get better results with your child being at school. But if you've got a teacher that's very standoffish and will not have a bar of it, then you will struggle with your experience. Because it is so hard and it's so overwhelming as a parent. Just hand your child over that you've spent years and hours of therapy and early intervention and days at home just trying to teach them to talk or to learn how to dress themselves because they didn't know how to do it with coordination. And you've spent hours and years of these therapy to now put your kid in an environment that's completely foreign, where you're not allowed to have an involvement in because they're supposed to integrate into the school. So your kid is supposed to now comply to the school and what's expected of them. So, and you know, with autistic children, they don't comply to the norm. They have their own way of doing things and their own way of thinking, and it's so unique, and it's wonderful when you open up to that world and you know them and what works for them and what doesn't. But it's getting that through to your school system is key. So now this is becoming a really long video, and if you're still here listening, thank you so much, because I know it's super hard to listen to me talk. But best I can say now without going in too much detail is pre-planning really helps. So my pre-planning for Luke is he has half days. We start off at the start of his day, very similar to Michael, how we started off away from the other kids. But how Luke starts off his morning is he drops his bag off at his classroom. He grabs a tub of toy dinosaurs. He carries that over to the sandpit, away from the classrooms, away from the other children, and he plays in the sandpit with his dinosaurs, and that is his quiet, safe place to start his morning. And then either the teacher or his aide, which SLO worker, will come and collect him. I say goodbye to Luke. Don't say bye, I say see you soon, and we do this. And that's mine and Luke's scripted way of saying goodbye to each other. And Michael actually comes along and does that too. When in the morning, Michael will come and also say goodbye to Luke at the same time that I say goodbye to Luke. And that's how I've been able to sort of disconnect the boys from relying on each other in the school environment, because Michael's his own person. He doesn't need to be in control of what Luke's doing, because he's his own person with his own friends, his own class. So in the mornings, having that quiet space where the sandpit, where we say our scripted goodbye. Luke then packs up the dinosaurs and carries them over to the classroom. Not every day will be successful, not every morning successful. Some mornings Luke might get very overwhelmed or have a meltdown, but that's okay. We take it very patiently. But that's how we've successfully transitioned Luke to school now. And, you know, he's loving it. He's reveling in that's what's expected of him, that this is where we start our morning. Before the bell goes, we pack the toys away and we walk to class, and we're in the classroom before all the other kids are in class. So without getting too ranty, basically have your plan in place. You want a successful outcome, you don't want a negative outcome, and you don't want to constantly hitting the wall with your teachers or your school as well, because that doesn't work. You need to be the bigger person and think to advocate for your child. You need to advocate for them, and you need to do it in a way that the school will listen, and it also will be better for your kid. So that's what I put in place. I put in social stories in place. So I started off with social stories. You can also do these on iPads, computers, videos. It doesn't have to be so, paper. Okay. Social stories help. If you want to, communication cards, saying to all the families and kids, explaining, hey, they're autistic and, they need your help and support in this time while they're so new. So communication cards, strategies that either your occupational therapist or your psychologist or your speech therapist can put in place to help your child have a successful time at school. If they need more sensory stuff to support being overstimulated by the sensory stuff going on at the school, being noisy children, needing headphones, or more of a quiet, if they need to start in the classroom rather than outside with all the other kids. It's just pre-planning. Pre-planning does help you in the long run. Yes, it might take weeks for that plan to be successful or that strategy to get results, and it might take a lot of fails where some days it'll work, some days it won't, and it's just about keep doing it and keep persevering with it, because you do see results in the end. And also just not expecting too much at the beginning, just keeping one goal in place. It might be just as simple as my kid does I want to start the school without him crying every morning, and building towards getting that goal. So not having really strong educational goals, expectations, like having your kid wanting counting to 10 in kindergarten. It's having that expectation of they were successful in counting to 5. It's and those little successes. So rather than being the big successes where they're keeping up with the other classes, you want to keep the successfuls maintainable and positive as well, without overwhelming yourself that your kid is not up to the speed of other kids in their classes, because that doesn't help you either. Because we could sit for days worrying and worrying and worrying about why my kid can't do that, or why they're not at that level, but it doesn't help them now. It's about just getting them settled into their right expectations for them. Hey, sorry I cut the video short. I found that I was getting myself too ranty and losing track of what I wanted to express or what I need to say. So I figured I'll end the video on this note. If you want me to keep going, comment down below, like, subscribe, give me video suggestions that I can openly talk about, because of course it's my life. I love my kids. I want to empower their lives to make them successful people. So thank you for watching the video. If you did survive watching the long video, say hello to the cat. Goodbye, cat. So thank you for watching, and until next time, follow me on other social medias. I'm really going above and beyond on Instagram now, which I will show you, because I'm finding some of these platforms are a bit easier to share and show everything. So I've made an Instagram, 2 little puzzle pieces, there it is, and just showing videos on the kids. So it's wonderful how big of a community there is on Instagram now of other parents that have autistic kids, and just empowerment to them. See, look, how wonderful is this? Sorry, I'll try and get it better. Look at that. So many wonderful families out there with Instagram accounts. Sorry, the glare is just super bad right now on this computer. But yeah, it's just amazing what community you can find on the social media. So I'm starting to find a really open community of other parents with autistic children and their lives and their successes and videos and just photos in general. So if you want to follow me on Instagram, it's just 2 little puzzles is the name. And add me, chat to me, it's alright. So thank you for watching. Until next time.